Hello and welcome to another episode of the Renewable Energy Movement powered by Kigyo. This week's guest is Filippo Ricci. Filippo is General Manager, Country Lead for Italy for Recurrent. Had the opportunity to record this one face-to-face as well, but we ran out of time last time in Milan. How are you, Filippo?
Hi, Tom. I'm very good, thanks. And thank you very much for inviting me here.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. As ever, let's start with kind of your early days or earlier days at the start of your career and your journey into renewables. How did that look?
Look, I think it was a bit random. I have a business background. I'm not an engineer. So I did my bachelor here in Milan. And then I tried to gain exposure to emerging markets. So I liked a lot to be able to gain some experience, some exposure to emerging markets. So I spent some time in China. I spent some time in Brazil. I was actually studying in Brazil for a couple of years. Then I went to New York. So I was not renewables was not something that was really in my radar, let's say. For some reason, after I did these studies in the different countries, I came back to my original hometown, which is Bologna. And I didn't have clear what exactly to do. I had, again, this business degree and with a lot of different experiences. So I was a bit, looking around, but with no pressure, with no rush. A friend of mine, which was an old friend of mine, he was working in Bologna for this smaller company, which was active in renewables. He asked me to help him out. I said, okay, maybe you have different plans. You have you want to go abroad, but while you are here, why don't you help me out? Because at least you can, you can see if what we're doing, it's something that you like and you take a view. So I said, why not? And they were very smart guys. They took over, a smaller insurance broker, which was, a bit more the traditional insurance broker. And they, back in the days, it was the boom of the Italian PV market. So they become very detailed, very specialist in this, in the insurance of this kind of assets. So they were helping investors, they were helping IPPs, they were helping clients in mapping all the risk and finding the right protections. So that is when actually the first time I got to know this industry, this market. I was there for less than a year, but because maybe insurance was not really my thing, but I actually found out about this renewable industry market, which was a really interesting one, very international. Of course, the idea of making something sustainable, fighting the climate change, and all things that were interesting me. So that I started looking how to make a career out of that. And that is when I started working in a bigger company in Bologna, which was mainly an EPC contractor. It's an array from the Maccaferi group. I was there, but I was working in business development. And back in the days, it was about international markets. So the European market was a bit.
Sorry to interrupt. This is pretty early for the Italian market, right?
Actually, I joined the second. I didn't join the first wave of the Italian market because the Conto Energia days, let me say, I was still studying. So when I joined the renewable energy industry, the Italian market was pretty much over. That was 2014. So most of the companies had to reinvent themselves, at least the companies that were more financially solid or they had more financial capabilities, of course, a bigger balance sheet that could afford, to do some overseas operations. So that was the case of this company I was referring to. And we were looking for opportunities in emerging market. That is also where my previous experience was coming handy. And you were following, all the renewable energy program. We did it in Jordan, we did it in Egypt, we did it at some point Chile was a big market. I think for a lot of companies, very high electricity prices, super high radiation. So I was having a lot of fun because I was traveling in these exotic places. I was very young, so not no families, concerns and that kind of stuff. So I was doing Chile, I was doing Jordan, I was doing Egypt, I was doing Cameroon, I was doing some Africa. Middle East and Africa basically was one of the hottest some of the hottest markets. I did it for 3 years. I think I met some people from Canadian Solar in Egypt, the Ban program was a big renewable energy program issued by the Egyptian government, which attracted a lot of companies. So my company was there, Canadian Solar was there as well. So we got in touch to make some business together, and they finally asked me to join the company in Milan, not in the business development, but in the M. That is what happened basically. After 3 years in this company, I relocated to Milan, and I started working at what was then Canadian Solar, the energy group.
Just to go back a little bit, sorry. Your time with NRA was essentially mapping out emerging potential markets globally, is that right?
Correct. Like basically you had globally, but at the end of the day, it was mostly South America and Middle East.
Okay. How did you find that experience, like culturally, with working with countries in Africa, Middle East, South America?
Look, it was very, very interesting because you had to adapt to all the different cultures, right? Like what you find in South America is very different from what you find in the Middle East and what you find in sub-Saharan Africa. So you learn a lot. You need to be open-minded. That is also, I think I always tried to travel a lot when I was younger. So this mix of cultures and this like open mindset was something that was part of my background, but definitely was one of the, it was very enriching, culturally speaking. You had two types of business opportunities. One was like the most structured ones, for example, like the IFC, the World Bank programs, trying to develop renewables in some markets like Egypt, like Jordan, or the completely unsolicited ones. So you would go to Cameroon, you said, okay, Cameroon makes, let's try to make a solar project in the middle of Cameroon. And basically you are there on yourself and you need to try to meet the right people and try to meet, you meet usually some local developers, which supposedly can help you negotiating like some sort of PPAs with the government, trying to find some debt financing. So and you need, to understand, where you are, what you're doing is making sense.
Were you following anybody internally? Was there somebody else that was above you, maybe a leader in NRA that had done this previously, or were you just going into these countries and blank page?
Yeah, usually, of course, I was part of the business development group. So we had a head of business development, which was covering was a global role. What we were usually doing was mapping the countries, trying to do a country analysis up front, understanding whether like that particular country will make sense or not. Mostly depending, of course, on how bankable, could be PPA or like usually if banks are in the market, that is already a good sign, because that makes the country bankable, or, that means that if you are there with an investment, usually you can find project financing. That is usually one of the main drivers that we will follow. But usually, I was doing like the first couple of trips with other colleagues, also trying to find a local partner. And after that, like I was mainly in charge of developing the market or not, or killing it. Depending on how hot it was.
Yeah. Really, it's really interesting, to be honest, especially in that time. So then you met somebody, like you mentioned previously, on a project in Egypt at Canadian Solar. And was that the way for you to then join Canadian Solar?
That is what happened. So I also like changed a bit, the perspective from business development to M&A. M&A in Canadian Solar was meaning basically selling the projects that we had. So we had like some operational portfolio in different countries, especially the UK. We had other some Africa. But Canadian Solar has always been, in those days, mainly a developer. At some point of the value chain, the company will try to sell, either like before construction, after construction. Again, we had some operational projects. We had some development, and the M&A team is in charge of going to market, of the route to market, usually without any external help, with any advisor. That is when I started, particularly, I changed a lot of the perspective because, in business, that is something that I really like, because in business development, you usually deal with developers, a local developer, which they are a specific kind of people. Okay, maybe not so sophisticated, like very, smart or connected, you move to M&A and you deal with investors and LPs, and it's a completely different counterparty, right? Because of course, they are maybe not so knowledgeable about like market specifics or project development and permitting stuff, but of course, they are very like sophisticated in terms of investment. So I started dealing with them. Again, I was very young, but I learned a lot. But I think like this M&A exposure like gave me the complete, I mean, I was completing my experience because I started in the business development and then I was selling projects which were, a final product.
Yeah.
So I was working in something that was not existing yet. And then I was working in something that was already there and you need to sell. So I was there for 5 years in the M&A.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of projects, a lot of, nice experiences, especially in the UK. This was I was spending a lot of time in London.
So your main focus at that point was in the UK, or did you have responsibility for some other countries as well?
No, I mean like the team was covering whatever we had in the region.
Mhm.
Of course, in
Yeah.
in Europe or Middle East, we had a lot in the UK. UK was very big because of the ROC certificates. So there was a feed-in tariff program in which Canadians saw a bit a lot. So I was mostly focused on divesting from the UK. And then I moved on. We had like more projects in it. I mean, we started doing some Italy. Actually, I think we sold one of the first PPA portfolio in the market parity environment after, the feed-in tariff. And we ended up selling it to Sonedix.
Yeah.
It was one of the first portfolio with a private PPA. I remember like we did this, but I was covering whatever was good for sale. So yeah, a lot of time in the UK, back and forth from Milano. After we ended up everything in the UK, we moved on.
And you spent 5 years in those types of positions.
Correct. We did all sort of transactions, from ready to build sale, NTP sale, COD sale, partnerships, JV. I mean, acquisition of JV and then the investment from the JVs. I moved from the manager position to the head of the M&A department in a couple of years. So I've been running this M&A team for 3 to 4 years in Europe. We had a lot of fun at the end because we came up with this idea of structuring sort of investment platforms, right? So I think also back in the days, there was quite a trend of yieldcos or in any case, trying to understand big platforms where you can drop your projects. So you develop, no? I mean, we are a developer and we will, every time if you go to market, you need to have a process and find the right investment for that particular project. While if you have a platform that can absorb what you're developing, it's much easier. This was a bit of a trend, and I don't think many actually managed to have that kind of structure set up, because it was a bit difficult, because you need to enter basically in an agreement to agree something later. I mean, yeah, if the project comes, this is the return, but then maybe the market, like the return is out of market. So it was very difficult to set the terms for something that was not so visible. But like we were going through this process of understanding what could be the best structure for us. And we set up a real estate investment fund in Italy, which is a very complex structure that like other players had and still have in the market. But it was a lot of fun because I was on top of it. I was managing the process, and it was something completely different from the business as usual, because that you will not set up a real estate investment fund normally. But I spent like a couple of years working on this, and we finally set up one, which is what is still hosting our operational project. And that is basically what I did in the final years of this mandate, setting up this platform. And then after 5 years, I said, okay, maybe I saw enough. I think I have a good spectrum, of all the possible transactions or all the different kind of players which are out there. So I wanted to move on a bit.
And just in that, so when you'd worked your way up to kind of director of M&A for the whole of EMEA, what was the size of the team? And also, where were they all based? I can imagine it was a pretty remote position, right?
Yeah, I think the team was 4 to 5 people. I like to say very high performing ones. Usually, when you do this kind of roles, I think you need to be very good and very able to manage the rest of your colleagues, because you go through a process which definitely needs to involve everybody which has worked in there. Because when you run due diligence, most of the time, you don't have the answers for the specific question, right? I mean, you're working in the M&A. That is also the good part of this role, because you are exposed, to all the possible questions that an investor is making. So you learn a lot, and you need to go around and chase your colleagues saying, okay, can you please help me answering this technical question, this legal question, this permitting question. So we had a couple of very good analysts focused on this. And then as you grow, maybe your role should be a bit more commercial, should be a bit more able to manage the expectations, both internal and external, right? Manage to be tough when you need to be tough, and also be accommodating when you actually need to close the deal. Because usually in this kind of transaction, you see it's always changing after exclusivity. So before exclusivity, all the investors are very nice with you.
Yeah.
Usually. And then you give exclusivity, and then it's when they start hammering. So you need to be able to read the situation and to manage, very well the expectation of both parties. But yeah, I mean, I think we had a very good team helping me with that, and the team was based in Milan and London.
Okay, so you were managing some of them in Milan, and the others you were doing remotely in London.
Correct. I think at some point we had also one in Spain, but we didn't have much to sell in Spain. Most of the things were either in the UK or
got you.
Or
okay. And then from the progression, then from that position, then was to country director or country manager for Italy. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So as I was saying before, like after 5 years, I think, it was time to do something different. Italy was becoming a very big market for us because back then we decided to start building our first projects. We had a very big pipeline. So I think like the organization had to change a bit, like to navigate like this complexity, this level of complexity, which was not there before. So I had a very productive, discussion with the company that say, okay, why don't you take this role? So you focus only on Italy right now. It's not a regional role, but you basically are responsible to oversee the operations that we have there, like what we do from development to construction and then operation. So we were moving into this IPP business model from a pure development business model. So there was a lot of work involved, not only in actually making the projects real, right? Like leading the project through construction and then make sure that the projects comes into operation with actually like the metrics that you were planning up front, but also transforming a bit the team, the processes, the mindset, the way you work, right? It's very different if you develop a project with a mindset or with the perspective to sell it to somebody else. It's not going to be your project. You're not operating that project while developing, with a different view. Say, okay, this is something that we need to build. It's not that like basically the quality of project should change. It should always be high, right? But the way you do things, the way you hand over things from one business team to another, the way actually you care about the details, I think should be a bit different. So we invested, and I was particularly keen to spend a lot of time in this, making sure that we had the right process, people capable.
But like you say, it shouldn't. The quality should always be there. But theoretically, if you're a developer looking to sell, you're thinking about what you're selling it for. Whereas if you're going to develop it yourself, you're thinking about making it not only the easiest, but the best you can develop it, right? So there naturally will be some subtle differences with the way that you set the project up. I think it's just impossible to not have that.
Look, nowadays we still have these options. We transform ourselves in an IPP, but we are not the IPP which builds whatever we are developing. We are very, I think I would say opportunistic, but at the same time realistic. We look where the market is, and if we can monetize very well our projects before construction, we usually do. I would put it in another way. We want to put our money where it makes the most sense, of course, for us. Knowing that our capital is not as cheap as maybe the one from a financial investor, right? So sometimes we sell, sometimes we build, but like at least now we do it with a process, with a team, with a mindset which enable us to be flexible. We can do whatever, and we can do it like we try to do it right in both ways, right? Before we were simply a developer which was transforming itself into a company. I think a more complex company, of course, because construction comes with more complexity. Of course, you increase tenfold the amount of money you are investing. So also like tiny mistakes can have quite an impact on your financials. So it's really like it's a different company, and we went through this transformation. I'm very proud that I was able to work with such a team that followed me, that helped me, understanding what to do, what to change. And I think right now we are a very different animal from what we were like just 2-3 years ago. And I think we walked a long way, honestly.
And how
Also because you need to be able to navigate this market, which is increasing, the level of the challenges. So if you're not ready, you cannot I don't think you can have a very good future.
No, for sure. What's the size of the team now in Italy compared to when you took over that role in 2023?
We have always been quite a big team in Italy. Italy for Canadian solar has always been an important market, like the market parity, at least industry. Like we opened the first office in Milan in 2016. So I guess we were among the first to actually believe in that this market will pick up again and to put, and hire like some team here. So I joined in 2018, not so far from the opening of the first office. Right now, I can tell you we are like 60 people, more or less. Not all of these people are covering only Italy. We have 60 people in Milan and Rome. So we also have an office in Rome. And some of these are also covering maybe some other markets in Europe. Okay. So of course, we are trying to centralize a bit people in this office because we do have a big office here, but we're also covering others. I think like people dedicated to Italy alone will be between 35 to 40. During the years, we tried to create a team which was able to cover all of the different stage of the value chain. So we do have development, we have construction, but we also have an O&M team, and we also have an asset management team. So the idea is that we can manage the whole thing on ourselves. And then we have our colleagues from the Canadian solar business, which are producing the modules, they are producing the batteries. So we do also have the technology which we are using in our projects. So I think we are very strategically positioned because we're covering all these areas, but we also have like technology know-how and technology access to this kind of product. Sometimes it can be. This is something that before I was joining Canadian Solar, I was a bit surprised because it's not so linked, right? We are, especially today, more independent companies than we used to be. But of course, we have synergies in the way we communicate and the way, we try to optimize the use of that technology for that project, which I think is coming as a really interesting value added. Of course, we don't know the price of modules in the next 2 years. Because I don't think anybody does. But yes, this is the company we are now. When I took over, I think it was more or less half of it.
How have you, we talked about this a little bit when I was in Milan offline, but how have you, it's quite a turbulent market, Italy, especially the staffing market, and to grow that much in 2 years is quite a good achievement. How have you managed the turbulences within the market? How have you managed to retain people, attract people?
I think, that's basically one of the main responsibilities of my role, of anybody that does the same role that I do, to try to, retain and create an environment which attracts people and retain talent, right? Like I think talent is one of the most important things that we need to look for, and I always see myself as somebody that should find the right talent and then empower it, right? Like this role comes with delegation and empowerment. So also if you find the right talent and then you cannot exploit it as much as you would, then you would have, not the best environment. So I think, this business comes with two real assets: projects and people. At the end of the day, there's not much more. Okay. There's not much more than that. It's not like we don't, it's brand equity. Of course, there are other industries where you have a product, where you have more intangible assets, or this is just projects and people. So you need to make sure you have good projects. Especially today, I'm really pushing a lot on the quality of what we're doing. We cannot afford anymore just to look for quantity, but we need to look for quality. I think that's part of the mindset that I would like everybody to have, but also because the market is changing, right? The market is becoming more competitive. The grid is saturated. So, doesn't make any sense to spend money if you are not 100% sure that this project makes sense. Okay. Then of course we can be wrong. You can be wrong. Maybe this project, this part of the business is part of of why we're making money developing. Otherwise, if it was not risky, we wouldn't make the money we do when we sell. But definitely, like we need to do something that is very good quality, and we need to make sure we have the right people, the people that are, and again, it's not just about like performance. It's about being very passionate, being down to the details, hands-on, people that ask themselves questions and say, okay, is this making sense or not? Is this, the right things or not? Is this the easy solution, or can I just like spend some more time in really looking into what makes more sense? So I'm really focused on these topics because I believe, again, this is part of my responsibilities, my core responsibilities, because again, we're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, this is again, projects and people, that's it. But for example, like we changed office. We used to have an office in Milan city center, right? In a very nice area, but like the office was a bit small, everybody was working in his own, like the kind of old apartments which are in downtown. So it used to be an apartment that became an office. So it's made about like a lot of small rooms and like without common areas and stuff.
Yeah.
And everybody was everybody was quite happy because it is, I mean, in a very nice place. You go down and you can have a walk and you can enjoy, the beauty of Milan downtown. But that wasn't making any sense because we were not like sharing any moment. We were not creating, community. I think you need to build a community. You need like to spend time together. So we relocated in the office actually where you came, which is a totally different place. I mean, it's not in the city center, okay, even if it's not that far, but it's a bigger office with common spaces, the kitchen, the breakout rooms, the more meeting rooms, the open space. And I can tell you that everybody at the beginning, everybody was not so happy to relocate far from downtown. Right now, I can say the opposite. Like we created a much better environment because we're spending much more time together, and I can see the results also in what we're doing in the business, to be honest.
Nice. It's a nice like tagline or slogan, people and projects. You should do something internally with it if you haven't.
Yeah, but that's also how you create value in the company. If any investor is coming to look at what you have, and it needs, like maybe at some point you need to raise capital, or I mean, like that is what they will look for: good projects and teams and performing teams, right? I mean, because again, there's not much more than that. I mean, I think we need to, as leaders, we need to put a lot of time into these two things. And make sure like we're working in the right direction.
And just before we finish up, I also you mentioned a little bit how the market has changed. The grid is obviously saturated. There's a lot more competition. What's your prediction for the Italian market specifically in the next couple of years?
Look, I think definitely, I mean, yes, we need to raise the bar, which in principle, I believe it's good for everybody. Everybody meaning us as professionals, because it means that we're doing like things that are a bit more complex with more barriers, with more, entry barriers. So it's not something that everybody can do, but you need to be on top of your game. But also something good for the final consumers, the final users, because if we deliver better projects, this should help, the electricity cost to go down and the electricity bills to go down. And we can also, that is really how I believe we're going to make the energy transition real. Because if you keep pushing on, we do sustainable green electricity, I don't think in today's environment, is something which is appealing for government, for voters. The whole picture changed from a few years ago. Right now, I don't think like people care too much. I think if you tell them that you are doing something which is not only good for the environment, because that's definitely true and that's definitely important, right? But also that can decrease your electricity bills, that can save you money for you government, for you company, for you citizen. This is how we're really going to make this transition real. So that's part of our responsibility. We need to make it happen. We need to deliver good projects, not like bad ones. And I'm sure everybody has a lot of bad projects in the pipeline. So we need to also be very realistic and kill them, because everybody sometimes is not embracing the challenge, but is pushing against. I know. I mean, I don't like the grid reform because I'm gonna lose 50% of my pipeline. But 50% of the pipeline is bad. You see my point? And of course, everybody. I mean, you need to make things right. You need to make things which which, I mean, you have people which have been investing in the years, they've been investing with some certain framework. So you need to respect that as a government, and you need to make things in the right way. But the general message is, I think, again, like the bar is raising and we need to embrace it. So I think in terms of growth, I mean, my biggest question today is what to do with growth. Okay. Because I think it's going to be years of execution. So you need to clean your pipeline, and then you need to make sure that the project you have, the good project can go through, can make it ready to build, can win an auction, can secure a PPA, can go through construction, and can be, something that you operate. So a lot of companies will be focused on that, on delivering this. There's going to be a lot of efforts in the execution, in growth. I mean, that is where really we're trying to understand how much is going to make sense to grow. I think it's a market that is growing, will grow in any case, but we really need to wait for some market reforms that are not there yet to understand how, when, and where, right? I mean, I think that's something that is not really clear yet.
Yeah, you raise a good point. It's got to make more sense. It's got to make complete sense for the end user. So it's a bit like EV vehicles, right? People do care about the sustainability side. They do care that they are driving something that's better for the environment, but the cost element has to be there as well. For most people, some people are in a fortunate enough position to do the right thing by the environment and to not care by cost. But most people, it needs to be a little bit of a cheaper option. It needs to be maybe you pay slightly less tax on an EV vehicle. If it's at equilibrium with a gas vehicle, the sustainability aspect isn't enough. And I think it's the same with electricity. We have to make the cost to the normal person, the average person, more attractive, because the sustainability piece on its own won't carry it through, right?
Exactly. That's part of our responsibility. That is part of our job. So we should do it, and we should understand that this is what we need to deliver, right? That we should be happy if we can have a project that can secure a lower electricity tariff, because that means that was developed, cheap, that was an effective grid connection solution. Because sometimes we go the other way around. I mean, we want the highest tariff possible because we make more money. Yes, definitely. That's a nice, but this is not happening anymore, right? I mean, we need to help the electricity transition by delivering good projects that can lower, the costs.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's gonna be very difficult. And again, nowadays, I don't see, of course, that environment that was there a few years ago about all this green, all the sustainability and all the ESG topic. Completely changed.
Indeed. Filippo, thanks so much for coming on. It was a really interesting journey, to be honest with you, for someone who fell into the space and now has spent a good part of your career working for one of the world's most reputable companies and part of a really exciting growth project in a really exciting country, Europe-wide, globally, within renewable energy. So thanks for being a guest.
Thank you very much, Tom, for inviting me. Of course, I like a lot what I'm doing. I think that's a nice job, and I like to share, my view and my experience. So maybe I can help anybody else just joining this industry as well, whoever's going to listen to this.
For sure. Somebody will be listening to this resonating completely. So thank you for that.
Thank you a lot.